Well, yeah, as Keith introduced me, I'm Arrigo, and I'm working as a postdoc here. So I'm fairly new on the group here, and I'm going to talk about a major project that me, Keith, Alex, and Stephen, and of course Grace are involved, and in particular are part of the project. So a small work package here, looking at the use of citizen science in order to scout and to find, to report, and monitor wild honeybee colonies here in Ireland. Now, in a way or another, all of us here are actually trying to solve one of the biggest issues that biodiversity, large globally, is actually facing in this moment, which is the global insect decline. So this, of course, these declines pose a threat to biodiversity and to ecology, and we're trying to do our best in a way or another to assess what is the status, what is the degree actually of these losses. And by understanding what these losses are, we are then able to conserve and protect the species. However, one category in particular that we actually do not know particularly how much they are doing, how well they are doing, are wild Apis mellifera. So Western honeybee colonies, not being managed in apiaries, but actually in the wild. For managed honeybees, we have good data about colony losses. We had the presentation before touching on Colos survey and everything. But it's very difficult to understand what is the conservation status of these honeybees. Now, if we look in particular at the situation in Ireland, actually, we have very good data thanks to the work of Keith and Grace in the past. So between 2015 and 2018, a survey was conducted here, lots of work on citizen science to collect data on the reports on wild honeybee colonies nests all over Ireland. You can see here around 108 colonies have been reported and found. One particular finding was the fact that actually some of these colonies, a good proportion of these colonies, were able to survive where they were followed by heat and others, and they found that they were able to survive past the threshold of the 2 years. Being the 2 years usually being the usual lifespan of a colony which is untreated and susceptible to the pathogens, in particular to Varroa destructor. So this good trait of survival, I would say, may be a hint on the fact that some of these colonies may be naturally adapted to face this pathogen, and may therefore be quite an important population that we should protect and conserve. Now, looking a little bit deeper into the data, we found out that this population is largely comprised of Apis mellifera, so the native honeybee subspecies here. However, Keith was not able very much to understand if there is a differentiation between the managed and free living colonies. There is a hint that there is a possible segregation, a possible differentiation between wild and managed populations, and indeed is worth looking into it. And that's the reason why then this whole project continue here. Because indeed more research is needed. So through the years, and thanks to the collaboration with the National Biodiversity Data Center, data on reports on free living colony nests have been collected all around Ireland, and in around 5 years almost they were able to quadruple the number of nests reported. So this is a good data set that we can start and look at and look into more details and start to work with this piece. Now, the main project, which let's say the team will be focusing on, will be focusing on studying the diversity and the adaptation of these wild honeybees. We will have 3 main work packages, and the first one being the use of citizen science to report and monitor colonies. To then further on with having investigation on adaptation in order to understand how actually these colonies are able to survive, and then using genomics to, let's say, to have much more an understanding of these wild colonies population genetics. Because in the previous study that I cited by Keith, mostly they did not use population genomics, and in this case we will start to use this sort of technology. For the sake of the talk, I will focus mostly on the first part, so the citizen science campaign here. And this citizen science campaign has, of course, the aim to promote this newly established Galway Honeybee Research Center, because it's we are very fresh and fairly newly established, and then extend the network of stakeholders, so to get more in connection with beekeepers or bee experts or anybody who's actually concerned about wild honeybees, in order to extend the network, and then motivate these citizens in order to collect more data and monitor these colonies. Now, we will use digital citizen science tools. In the past, as I've shown, the reporting was done mostly on this on the National Biodiversity Data Center website using this tool, which is generally referred as the Wild Honeybee Study here in Ireland. But then, thanks to Ethan, our web developer, we created a monitoring tool that this will enable us to collect data, time series data on the colonies that we are monitoring. Now, to give you an idea of the plan, if you consider just the span of a year, the important thing for us is to understand two critical points in the survival of our wild colonies, and in particular whether the colony will swarm. So if it's we have a measure of its fitness, if it's really able to reproduce, and then whether the colony is able to pass the winter, to survive the winter. So we are planning on doing this monitoring on different phases of the year in order to catch and get as much data as possible on here. So either after winter, so to understand if they're surviving, before swarming, after swarming, and then before winter. Now, how do we want to do that? The idea is actually to activate the citizens, so to activate the custodians in this case, through different methods. We plan to do 3 major Zoom events where we are gonna get directly in touch with the citizens and provide them training on how to do the monitoring, how to work with the digital tools. We will give them updates on what is the current status of the project, and of course we will be very open to any suggestions or feedback that they may have. And these Zoom events will then be disseminated using classical newsletters, and then also in these newsletters we will share updates and try to expand as much as possible the network. And then we also plan to have some sort of dissemination through general beekeeping journals. So again, to expand more and more the network that we have. So the vision that we have for this whole project is actually to create the first organized community of wild honeybee custodians here in Ireland. And this actually will enable us to use the data in order to get more done into for the conservation of the local subspecies here in Ireland. But more importantly, this being one of these first sort of citizen science project, we intend to also create a template that will be used for future large-scale monitoring studies, as the Galway Honeybee Research Center is part of a bigger network of different European initiatives that are also trying to gather data on wild honeybees and to work for their conservation. So with this, I thank you, and if you have any question.
Thanks, Arrigo. You almost been practicing your both of your days.
Okay.
Okay, we'll open up to the floor again. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I heard properly, but you said you have method to measure fitness in colonies. Can you explain that a little?
Yeah. So when I touched on that was when I was talking about swarming. So an idea, our idea with this monitoring part, I didn't go through the details because I didn't want to, extend too much to talk. But we will look specifically at whether the colonies will swarm or not. And if a colony is able to swarm, that means it's fit or is able to effectively reproduce and reproduce and pass the genes to the next generation. So that's a measure of fitness. And of course, this part is just, this work factor is just one part of the bigger analysis. We'll look into pathogens also, susceptibility of these colonies to pathogens and everything else. So we will have a much broader picture of what we aim, what we will understand as a fitness measure of these colonies. Yeah.
Very nice talk.
Thank you.
Just wondering what kind of differences and why you would expect the wild honeybees necessarily to be that genetically different from the managed?
So, well, that's in a way we want trying to understand how much the management also impacted the honeybees. So you can understand whether you can see if there is any effect maybe on the fact that beekeeping changes the way in which bees reproduce. Maybe they're more into gas or less into gas. We saw, for example, the talk by Stephen before on hybridization and everything else. It's difficult to tell whether they will be genetically different or not, but it's the best way would be to see if there are some islands, let's say population or island in a way, that are untouched by beekeeper, so that we will have a wild population there where beekeepers, like with the managed colonies, will not affect their diversity. So yeah, we're going to see if that's the case.
Do you have some islands out there?
From the preliminary data that we have, I know.
It could be about somewhere around.
We from Keith's work, yeah. So we had some hints, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but
There's additional sampling to be done. There's possibilities, but it will depend as well on wind direction on some of these islands. What might be blown on, what might whether or not drones could have come in from elsewhere. If the wind direction is wrong, you could have had hybridized drones coming in. So we have to get a bit more information from the islands. But one of the things, just to expand kind of on Arrigo's answer, when it comes to the genetic differences, we don't necessarily have the tools yet to see what are the differences the genetic differences that point towards different behavioural characteristics between wild honeybees that can survive past varroa and those that don't. The first step using the citizen scientists to identify, and then using the monitoring tool, is to determine which ones are actually surviving and get a solid fix on that. The graph that was up there from my previous work, or our previous work, should I say, it was based on phone calls, and it was based on talking to people who kept an eye on the colony. So it's semi-reliable, it's quite anecdotal. What we're trying to do is we're trying to pin that down and make a more solid scientific look at that. If we can find those colonies that are surviving, then we're going to try and pinpoint what are the genetic differences linked to certain behavioural characteristics, such as scientific behaviour.
Yeah, that's very cool.
That's
Some of
it's a
those
long way
extremes,
down.
if you have those surviving, and you have enough not surviving, you have quite a sample size of those. That's sort of a great basis for a GWAS to start with, even just to see what the differences are, right?
Yeah.
Genotypicity study anyway.
That's the long-term aim.
Yeah.
It's building up what are we going to talk about? It's simply building up the data initially to know where we're going to look.
yeah,
Because
well,
you want to be starting with those extremes, right?
Yeah.
To start with.
those
So you
extreme
have those people, it's somewhere in the middle, it doesn't,
and those extremely need to be validated. That's why we are actually trying to get in contact as much as possible with these custodians, because with citizen science, a big issue is validation actually, the data that you get. So that's the major part that we will be working on. But there's definitely some work to do.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
How are we doing on time? Any more?
Oh,
Darren?
Darren.
Last question. Darren, go ahead.
Just a quick one. It's really interesting, and it would be great if we can incorporate any sort of independent genetic adaptations or lineages from these wild populations. I was just wondering, do we know whether there is any consistent thread in a wild population, or is it just they're wiped out and they spill over from managed populations again and again and again.
So as for Ireland, I cannot tell you at the moment.
The quick answer, if I can jump in, is we don't really know. We're still trying to build up the data on that. As I say, from the previous study, we had anecdotal evidence from custodians, people who were keeping an eye on those colonies. So we don't think that every single colony is just replaced, dies out every year, and is replaced by an influx from managed colonies. But we have more work to do to prove it. The hypothesis is that there are colonies that are surviving in the wild without interference or any interaction with humans, so or managed colonies.
Yeah, I suppose you need a pedigree for a species which can disperse 5, 10, whatever kilometers, which will be interesting. But yeah, very interesting.
Just to say, yeah, if I just say that we do have, I put in the chat there, very small amount of data from genomics at the moment to prove lineage existence over multiple years, but we didn't collect, we didn't have any money or much knowledge when we started back in 1617, so we didn't collect very many bees. We were, so, you know, at the time from those colonies, so we don't have an awful lot of colonies from that time point, but we've done genomics on the ones where we've collected enough bees, and we've shown, at least with some of them, colony longevity. So using genomics, we can show that those colonies were the same lineage. But we're trying to now, we're collecting, so the samples we collected 2019, we'll be going back collecting those again now this year and doing that same analysis to show how many of those are the same colony. We have also shown that with mitochondrial DNA that some of them have swapped lineage, so they've gone from an M to a C lineage, which shows what you're suggesting, that the colony was wiped out and replaced. So there's certainly a mixture. You would expect that, you know, up to 80% of the colonies can die out in the first winter. You know, all the weak colonies will die out, but there are a certain proportion that are maintained. Some of the custodians are not reliable. Some of the custodians, the colonies are in, you know, in their roof spaces and in the windows, and they're seeing them every day. So those people are much more reliable in terms of the amount of times that they're seeing the colonies, and also not seeing swarms going out but not coming in. So there's a real mixture in our data, but we certainly have evidence that some of them are living. So that's the aim of this project, is to show now, using much more elegant methods, that they are surviving. Because we know we need to prove that, because there'll be skeptics that will, you know, always will want to say they don't survive, they're just escapes. But we do know that some of them are.
Just had a quick note on that, Grace, and I think you need some, you know, we have managed colonies from around the place, and a few bees left in bees left in the -80. So if you have a particular place where you want to see what the managed ones are,
Well, definitely.
talk to us.
Yeah.
Because we have bees from, you saw those maps all
Yeah.
around Ireland, from managed colonies.
We can add it to our own data as well, because we have a lot of managed ones as well. There couldn't be overlap to some degree at this point.
Yes.
Because we do have a lot of samples from managed colonies as
No,
well.
okay.
Over time. Yeah, but it's a time series which is probably going to be of interest, particularly when we're trying to look at hybridization, how it's changing over time. Good to know.
Thanks.